The twin sons of Zythera had begun their slow descent, casting long shadows over the jagged plains and broken cities. Smoke curled from the ruins of villages that had once thrived with life, and the cries of the wounded echoed across the valleys. Zythera had never known such fear. For years, its people had watched the galaxy's news from stolen signals and ancient archives, knowing there were powers far stronger than their own. But now, those powers were upon them. The Vorak Empire, a ruthless conqueror of worlds, had arrived, and the planet trembled under the weight of their fleet. Commander Lyra stood atop a shattered tower in the capital, her eyes scanning the horizon. She was not just a soldier. She was a symbol of hope for the people who had no hope left. Her armor was scorched, and the long braid of her hair was streaked with ash, but her posture remained proud and unbroken. Around her, the resistance fighters moved with quiet urgency, tending to the wounded, repositioning what little artillery they had left, and readying themselves for the inevitable. "Commander," said Kale, her second in command, "we've finished sending the distress signal. Now we wait. There is nothing more we can do." His voice trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion. Weeks of fighting, hiding, and running had worn him down, and even his steady hands now shook as he checked the final coordinates of the outgoing signal. Lyra's eyes did not leave the horizon. The sky was filled with the Vorak fleet, dark shapes blotting the last light of the suns. Their ships were enormous, bristling with weapons that had reduced entire worlds to ashes. The ground trembled beneath them as the fleet adjusted its positions in orbit, preparing to unleash devastation. She had seen the fleet before, in old images and stolen broadcasts, but nothing compared to witnessing it hovering above her home. It was overwhelming, terrifying, yet strangely inspiring. For if the Vorak considered her planet insignificant, they had underestimated the will of its people. Lyra turned to her team. "We've done what we could. The message has gone. Now we hold. For our families. For our people. For Zythera." Her voice carried over the ruined plaza, a calm anchor in the storm of fear surrounding them. The fighters straightened, drawing strength from her words. Even Kale felt it, a flicker of determination rising amidst despair. They would fight to the end, even if it seemed meaningless. The first attacks came as the suns disappeared behind the Vorak ships. Beams of searing light struck the city, flattening buildings and setting fire to forests in a wave of destruction. The ground shook violently, throwing debris into the air. Resistance fighters took cover, some helping civilians, others readying weapons. The smell of smoke and ozone filled the air, choking the lungs and eyes alike. Lyra dove behind a fractured wall, pressing herself close to Kale. Their radios crackled with distant screams, orders, and the static of interrupted communications. "They're coming faster than expected," said Kale. "Our defenses won't hold long." His voice was tight with tension, and he kept glancing at the sky, expecting the next wave of destruction. Lyra nodded silently, her mind racing. She knew he was right. The Vorak were relentless, precise, and merciless. They did not give mercy, and they did not stop. Zythera's only chance lay in the message they had sent, and whether anyone would answer. Hours passed like minutes. Each moment stretched into eternity as the city burned. Families huddled together, crying and praying, hoping that someone, anyone, would hear their call. Lyra moved through the streets when she could, helping civilians escape collapsing buildings, guiding fighters to strategic positions, and coordinating the few defenses left intact. Her presence was a beacon. When she passed, people found courage, even in the face of annihilation. Night fell, though Zythera's two sons never truly disappeared. The fires from destroyed buildings lit the sky with a grim glow, turning smoke and ash into a haunting reflection of what the planet had once been. Lyra climbed the highest remaining tower, using a long-range scope to survey the damage. Everywhere she looked, she saw fire, smoke, and shadows of those who had fallen, but she also saw movement resistance fighters regrouping, civilians helping one another, and small pockets of determination refusing to give in. In a quiet moment, Kale joined her. "Do you think anyone received the signal?" he asked. His voice was almost lost in the roar of distant explosions. "Do you think anyone will come?" Lyra did not answer immediately. She tightened her grip on the scope, focusing on a group of fighters defending a bridge under attack. "I don't know," she said finally, "but hope is not about knowing. It's about standing. Even when you think no one will come, we fight because we must. If help comes, it will be because we never gave up." Her words were firm, yet carried a vulnerability she rarely allowed herself to show. She too was unsure if anyone would answer, but she refused to show fear. The Vorax attacks grew more intense. Massive war machines landed in the plains outside the city, tearing through barricades and walls with mechanical precision. Zytheran defenders were pushed back, fighting desperately to protect their families. Lyra and Kale led counterattacks, using guerrilla tactics they had perfected over years of resistance. Despite their bravery, they were losing ground. Every building taken, every street lost, was a reminder of the overwhelming power they faced. In the midst of battle, a young girl named Mira appeared at Lyra's side. She was no older than 10, her clothes torn, and her eyes wide with terror. "My parents, she whispered, pointing toward a nearby collapse, where smoke and flames obscured everything. Lyra crouched beside her. "They are strong," she said gently, though her heart ached at the sight of the child. "And so are you. We will do everything we can to find them." Mira nodded, clutching Lyra's hand. And for a moment, the horrors of war were set aside, replaced by a fragile, human connection. Hours turned into days. The Vorak did not relent, and Zythera's people grew weaker. Supplies ran low. Water became scarce, and the cries of the injured echoed constantly. Yet the resistance did not falter. Lyra organized patrols, rescue teams, and medical aid wherever she could. Every victory, no matter how small, was celebrated. Every loss, mourned quietly, only strengthened their resolve. Late on the third day, as the twin suns rose and set, Lyra climbed to the top of the tallest hill outside the city. She gazed at the stars, the void beyond Zythera, and whispered the words she had not spoken aloud. "If anyone is out there, hear us. Hear Zythera. We are still standing. We will not give up." Her voice carried in the wind, almost swallowed by the distant thunder of the Vorak fleet. That night, for the first time, a strange signal flickered across their communications network. Weak, distorted, and almost impossible to decipher. It was not a message they could fully understand, but it existed. The resistance paused, listening with bated breath. Could it be an answer? Hope, fragile and uncertain, began to stir in the hearts of those who had thought all was lost. Lyra returned to the city at dawn, her determination renewed. She moved among her people, speaking words of courage and reassurance. "We are not alone," she said, her voice firm, though she did not know for certain if anyone was coming. "We may have thought we were, but we are stronger than we imagine. We will survive this night, and we will fight again tomorrow." And so, Zythera's people prepared for the next wave. The Vorak would come again, and the planet would tremble under their might. Yet in the midst of fire, smoke, and despair, a spark of hope burned, a spark that would not be extinguished, a spark that whispered of something greater, something beyond the galaxy's void. Somewhere, far away, someone was listening. And that someone might just change everything. Lyra looked up at the darkened sky one last time before resting. She did not know if they would be saved, or if Zythera would fall into shadow forever, but she knew this. As long as even a single fighter stood, as long as even one child survived, they were not defeated. The planet would not surrender, and its people would not break. They would fight, they would endure, and perhaps, when the time came, the sky itself would bring salvation. In the silence of that night, Zythera waited, waiting for hope to arrive, waiting for the impossible to occur. And as the stars shimmered faintly above, the people dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were not truly alone. The night over Zythera was heavy with smoke and ash. But before the first light of dawn, something impossible began to happen. Small blips appeared on the planet's long-range scanners, blips that moved with purpose and precision. Commander Lyra was among the first to notice them. She leaned over the console, her eyes widening as she saw the readings. "Kale, look at this," she said, her voice trembling slightly, though her tone tried to mask hope. They're coming." Kale squinted at the screen. "Coming? What do you mean, coming? Who? Where? How?" "I don't know yet," Lyra admitted, her heart racing. "But it's not Vorak. That much I know." Moments later, the horizon glowed with a strange light. It began as a thin streak across the sky, then multiplied into several streaks, each moving faster than any Zytheran or Vorak craft could manage. Then they dropped out of the atmosphere like falling stars, but controlled, precise. Massive ships appeared in orbit, and smaller crafts began descending toward the planet's surface. The resistance fighters froze in awe. Children clutched their parents, and adults stopped mid-step, staring at the glowing ships that hovered above their world. For months, they had prepared for the end, for destruction, for death. But what hovered above them was something they had only ever dreamed of. The ships were sleek and silver, their surfaces reflecting the light of Zythera's twin suns. They were unlike any vessel the Zytherans had ever seen. Fast, elegant, and deadly. And from these ships, warriors began to descend. Humans, clad in armor unlike any Zytheran design, landed across the battlefield with perfect coordination. Each group moved with purpose, spreading out to engage the Vorak forces. Lyra felt her breath catch. They were real. Humans, Earth's warriors, had come. "They're beautiful," whispered Mira, the young girl who had stayed close to Lyra. Her small hand gripped Lyra's sleeve tightly. "Yes," Lyra said, her voice low and steady. "And they are here to fight." The Vorak, meanwhile, were unprepared. They had expected Zytherans to be the last resistance, weak and desperate. But these newcomers were different. Their weapons were strange, glowing with energy unfamiliar to the Vorak. Their movements were precise, tactical, and fearless. They did not rush blindly into battle. They coordinated, flanked, and outsmarted the enemy at every turn. A group of Vorak walkers stomped toward the city center. Weapons aimed to flatten the remaining defenses. A team of humans dropped in front of them, their energy shields flickering to life as they advanced. They fired with strange weapons that emitted blasts of light and sound, sending the walkers crashing to the ground. The Zytherans watched, mouths open, as the humans moved like a single organism. Every action measured, every attack deadly. Kale grabbed Lyra's arm. They're amazing. Look at them." Lyra nodded, unable to tear her eyes away. She saw humans coordinating with Zytheran fighters, teaching them new ways to fight, sharing tactics in real time. The resistance quickly adapted, learning to use the terrain, to anticipate attacks, and to strike with precision. The Vorak had never faced a force like this one, that fought with intelligence, courage, and an unwavering will. One human soldier, a tall man with short black hair, ran past Lyra and Mira. He shouted something in a language she did not understand. But the meaning was clear. The humans were giving hope, and hope spread quickly among the Zytherans. People who had been hiding, trembling in fear, now picked up weapons and joined the fight. Every time a human team cleared a street or destroyed a Vorak machine, the Zytherans cheered. Lyra's mind raced as she watched the humans. They were not just fighters. They were teachers, leaders, and symbols of courage. Their presence alone changed the battlefield. Even the Vorak soldiers faltered under their attack, unsure of how to counter tactics they had never seen. As the battle raged, Lyra led a group of Zytheran fighters alongside a small human squad. They moved toward a Vorak communications tower that had been directing attacks. The humans signaled for the Zytherans to cover their advance, and Lyra's group did so with precision. The humans scaled the tower effortlessly, placing devices that emitted bright pulses of energy. Within minutes, the tower went dark, cutting off Vorak coordination across the nearby sectors. "Commander, they're incredible," Kale said out of breath. Lyra shook her head. "No, we can do this together. Humans fight with us, not for us, and that makes all the difference." Meanwhile, Mira followed a small group of human medics, their kits glowing faintly as they treated wounded Zytherans. She watched as a soldier bandaged a boy who had been trapped under rubble. He smiled gently at her and nodded, as if to say everything would be okay. Mira's fear began to fade, replaced by awe. For the first time in days, she felt safe. The sky above Zythera continued to shift. More human ships descended, dropping teams that spread out across the battlefield. Their coordination was unmatched, covering every corner of the city and plains beyond. The Vorak tried to regroup, launching waves of attacks, but every advance was met with precision counters. Human warriors used advanced sensors to detect Vorak movements, then relayed the information instantly to Zytheran units. Every ambush was foiled. Every attack met with a counterstrike. Lyra found herself standing atop a collapsed building, directing her fighters alongside a human officer. The officer, speaking slowly and clearly in a broken version of Zytheran, instructed her group on flanking maneuvers. Lyra followed the directions, and within moments, they had cleared an entire street of Vorak patrols. Zytheran fighters cheered, their morale skyrocketing. Hours passed, and the battle shifted. Where the Vorak had brought despair, humans brought hope. Zytheran fighters moved with new confidence. Civilians helped in ways they had never imagined, and even those who had thought survival impossible began to fight. Lyra could hardly believe the change. It was as if the arrival of humans had awakened something dormant within Zythera's people, a strength they had never realized they possessed. During a brief lull in the fighting, Lyra and Kale surveyed the battlefield. "They're not just soldiers," Kale said quietly. "They're heroes. We've never seen anything like this." Lyra nodded, watching as humans coordinated with Zytheran engineers to repair vital structures, reinforce barricades, and set traps for Vorak forces. Their strategy was not just to fight, it was to ensure survival, to build hope, and to protect the people. It was the human way, she realized. Courage combined with intelligence, bravery tempered with care. As the day turned into night, the Vorak began to retreat from some sectors. The humans pressed forward, clearing key areas and saving civilians trapped in rubble or surrounded by enemy forces. Lyra led a group to rescue a family from a destroyed home. A human soldier helped her carry a small child to safety, then smiled reassuringly before rushing back to the front lines. The sight of humans helping Zytherans, risking themselves to save others, inspired every fighter and civilian around them. By the time Zythera's second dawn appeared, the battle had shifted dramatically. The Vorak, once confident in their victory, were faltering. They regrouped in scattered formations, unsure of how to proceed against an enemy they could not predict. Humans had changed the battlefield in hours, something the Vorak had never thought possible. Lyra stood on a hill overlooking the city. Fires still burned, and smoke rose from damaged buildings. But for the first time in months, she saw people smiling, cheering, and moving with determination rather than fear. The human warriors were everywhere, coordinating attacks, aiding civilians, and inspiring hope. Kale joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "They've saved us, haven't they?" he asked softly. Lyra did not answer immediately. She watched as a human officer helped a Zytheran boy carry supplies to a safe zone. She watched as a soldier guided a group of citizens past Vorak patrols with calm efficiency, and she realized the truth. They had not just saved them, they had shown them what it meant to fight, to hope, and to survive. "Yes," she said finally, a small smile breaking through her ash-streaked face. "They've saved us, but more than that, They've given us the strength to save ourselves. The humans did not stop at the city. They spread out across Scythera, clearing villages, rescuing civilians, and dismantling Vorak operations. Every move was precise, every action deliberate, every life protected. Scythera was no longer a doomed planet. It was a battlefield of courage, hope, and unity. Mira ran to Lyra, her small face glowing with excitement. "They're amazing," she exclaimed. "They're really amazing." Lyra nodded, ruffling the girl's hair gently. "Yes, they are. And one day, you'll tell everyone what it felt like when humans came from the sky to save us all." As the twin suns rose fully over Scythera, Lyra looked up at the sky once more. The human ships remained above, patrolling, ready to strike again if needed. But even as they hovered silently, their presence was enough. Scythera was no longer alone. And as long as the humans remained, even if only for a short while, the people knew one thing for certain: they could fight, they could survive, and perhaps, they could even win. In the heart of the city, Lyra whispered a quiet promise to herself and to her people. "We will not give up. We will not surrender. And if they fall from the sky again, we will stand beside them, ready to fight for our world." The day ended with the sounds of hope, the cheers of survivors, the cries of the wounded being tended to, and the hum of human ships above. Guardians in the sky. Scythera had seen the impossible, and now the impossible had become reality. For the first time in months, Scythera slept peacefully, if only for a moment, knowing that help had arrived, and that the future might just be theirs to shape. The battle on Scythera had changed in ways no one could have imagined. The Vorak, once confident in their conquest, now hesitated. Their massive war machines, which had once crushed cities with ease, were falling to well-coordinated strikes from humans and Scytheran fighters working together. Streets that had been overrun with Vorak troops were now fortified by barricades and human technology, with sentries keeping watch for any signs of attack. Commander Lyra moved through the city alongside KL and a small group of human officers. They walked past fires still burning in the ruins, past civilians who were helping clear rubble and provide aid, past fighters preparing weapons and supplies. It was a scene of organized chaos, but one full of hope. Lyra had never seen her people so determined, so united. "Today, we strike back," said one of the human officers, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a calm voice. Her armor gleamed in the dim light, reflecting the fires of the city. She spoke in broken Scytheran, and Lyra did her best to interpret for her fighters. "We know the Vorak will try to regroup. We must move fast. We take their supply lines. We cut their communications. We show them Scythera is not weak." Lyra nodded, understanding perfectly. "We will fight with you," she said firmly. "Show us what to do, and we will follow." The humans divided the city into sectors. Each human team was paired with Scytheran fighters, sharing knowledge and strategy as they prepared for the next phase. Lyra's group was assigned to the eastern sector, where the Vorak had established a makeshift command post. They would attack at dawn, coordinating with other sectors for a simultaneous strike. Night fell, and the city was quiet for the first time in days. Lyra moved through the streets, checking on civilians and fighters alike. She saw families sharing small meals, children playing quietly under watchful eyes, and fighters sharpening weapons and reviewing tactics. There was a sense of calm determination in the air, a confidence that had been absent for so long. At the eastern edge of the city, Lyra and her group met with the human squad assigned to their sector. The officer who led them, named Captain Mason, outlined the plan. "Vorak forces are strongest at the command post," he said. "They have automated defenses and patrols. We'll divide our forces. Half will approach from the south, using the alleyways and ruins for cover. Half will create a distraction near the main gate. Timing is everything. When we strike together." Lyra studied the map, nodding. "We understand. Let's make sure everyone knows their role. We cannot afford mistakes." By the first light of dawn, the teams moved out. The streets were silent except for the soft hum of human technology, and the quiet whispers of Zythran fighters. Mira, the young girl, watched from a safe distance, her eyes wide with anticipation. She had been allowed to stay with a group of medics who were following the fighters, ready to help any wounded. The first movement came from the southern approach. Lyra led her group through narrow alleys, staying low and using debris as cover. They could see the Vorak soldiers patrolling, their movements rigid and mechanical. The humans had taught the Zytherans how to remain unseen, how to move silently, and how to use the environment to their advantage. Lyra felt a surge of pride as she watched her fighters follow the instructions perfectly. Suddenly, a Vorak sentry turned a corner. Lyra signaled, and the human soldier nearest to her activated a small device that emitted a soft pulse of light. The sentry froze for a moment, confused, and before it could react, the team moved past, unseen. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless, and it gave the Zytherans hope. Meanwhile, the distraction team approached the main gate. They launched small energy pulses and flares, drawing the attention of Vorak forces. Automated turrets activated, firing at the decoys. While the main strike team, led by Lyra and Captain Mason, moved into position. Timing was perfect. The humans' precision allowed the Zytherans to follow without alerting the enemy prematurely. As they neared the command post, the battle began. Vorak soldiers noticed the approaching fighters and opened fire. But the human shields absorbed much of the attack, allowing the Zytherans to advance. Lyra and Kale moved with practiced coordination, taking down enemies strategically, avoiding direct confrontation when possible, and ensuring civilians nearby were safe. Inside the command post, the humans had already hacked into Vorak systems. Energy shields flickered and powered down, communication lines were disrupted, and automated defenses malfunctioned. The Vorak soldiers inside were confused, trying to understand how their systems failed so suddenly. The humans had done what seemed impossible. They turned the enemy's strength into weakness. Lyra's team stormed the command post. The fight was intense, but controlled. Humans led the charge, Zytherans followed, and together they moved with precision. Vorak forces were strong, but unprepared for the coordinated attack. Every step Lyra took, every move she made, was guided by what she had learned from the humans. She realized that the real strength was not just in weapons, but in strategy, cooperation, and courage. By mid-morning, the eastern sector was secure. The command post had been taken. Vorak patrols were scattered, and supplies were captured. The victory was not just strategic. It was psychological. The Vorak no longer seemed invincible. The people of Zythera could see that their enemy could be defeated with courage, planning, and unity. Lyra moved through the captured post, coordinating with human engineers who were repairing equipment and establishing communications. She saw a young human soldier, no older than 20, teaching Zytheran fighters how to use advanced sensors to detect enemy movements. It was not just a fight. They were building skills, knowledge, and confidence among the Zytherans. In the city center, other sectors reported similar successes. Villages that had been overrun were being cleared, Vorak machines were being disabled, and civilians were rescued. Every corner of Zythera that humans reached experienced a wave of hope and renewed determination. People who had hidden for days now took up arms, not out of desperation, but out of courage, inspired by what they saw. Lyra paused to catch her breath on a rooftop overlooking the city. Fires still burned, but they were no longer the only lights in the darkness. Energy shields and human technology glowed softly, marking positions of defense and security. Zytherans moved confidently through the streets, their steps guided by new knowledge and hope. Mira ran past her, carrying a basket of supplies to the medics, smiling despite the chaos. Kale joined Lyra on the rooftop. This is more than I imagined," he said, his voice filled with awe. "They've changed everything." Lyra nodded, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Yes, and it's not just the humans, it's us too. They show us what we can be. We've been weak, afraid, but now, we are strong. We are united." The next phase of the battle involved cutting off the Vorak's escape routes. Human engineers set up devices that disrupted enemy communications across wider areas, while human and Scytheran fighters patrolled key roads and mountain passes. Every Vorak movement was met with resistance, and every counterattack was anticipated. The Vorak were being forced to fight on the defensive for the first time, and it showed. During one patrol, Lyra encountered a group of Vorak soldiers attempting to ambush civilians. She led her team in a swift, coordinated strike. Using tactics she had learned from the humans, they disabled the Vorak soldiers without endangering the civilians. The people watched in amazement as the fighters moved with precision and care. It was a display of discipline and strategy that Scytherans had never experienced before. By evening, the battle had shifted almost entirely in favor of the defenders. The Vorak were retreating from key positions, regrouping only where they could maintain control. Humans had not just fought, they had taught, inspired, and empowered. Scythera's people were no longer waiting for salvation. They were fighting alongside their allies, confident in their ability to resist. Lyra gathered her team at a central plaza. The sun was setting, painting the city in shades of orange and red. Fires still burned, but they were fewer, and the sounds of battle were quieter. Today, we fought not just for survival, she said, her voice carrying over the plaza. We fought for our future. And we have learned that we are not alone. We have allies. We have strength. We have hope. Kael looked around at the fighters, young and old, human and Scytheran alike. This is just the beginning, he said. The Vorak will return. But we are ready now. We are stronger than they know. Lyra nodded, looking at the horizon where human ships still hovered. Yes. And when they come again, we will be ready. Together. Quote, as night fell, the city was quiet in a way it had not been for months. Fires were tended, the wounded were cared for, and patrols continued under the glow of human technology. Scythera had survived the day, and in doing so, it had been transformed. The people no longer saw themselves as victims of a merciless empire. They saw themselves as fighters, survivors, and a united civilization capable of standing against any threat. Lyra walked to the edge of the plaza, her eyes on the sky. She whispered to herself, a quiet promise to her people, and to the humans who had saved them. We will fight. We will endure. And one day, we will show the galaxy that Scythera is strong, that we are not to be conquered, and that courage and unity can overcome even the greatest enemy. Mira ran to her side, holding a small flag she had found among the ruins. We did it, she said, her voice bright. We won today, Lyra smiled, ruffling the girl's hair. Yes, today we did. But tomorrow, we fight again. And every day after that, until Scythera is free. The city rested that night under a sky still filled with human ships. The people slept cautiously, knowing the Vorak would strike again, but with hope in their hearts. Scythera had been changed forever, not just by the arrival of humans, but by the courage they inspired. The planet had learned a truth that would echo across generations. When humans come, they bring not just power, but hope, strategy, and a belief in what is possible. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the day, the exhaustion, and the hope. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she was ready. They were ready. Scythera would not fall. And when the sky fell again with enemies, humans would be there to fight alongside them. The city slept, but the fires of courage burned brighter than ever. Scythera had learned to fight, and it had learned to believe. The sun rose slowly over Scythera, painting the jagged horizon in soft gold. Smoke still drifted from broken buildings, and the scent of burned earth lingered in the air. But for the first time in months, the people of Scythera did not tremble in fear. They had fought, they had survived, and they had learned that courage could overcome despair. Yet even as hope filled their hearts, the final battle had yet to come. Commander Lyra stood on a hill overlooking the plains where the Vorak had regrouped. Their flagship, a massive war machine, hovered above the landscape. its dark hull blotting out the sun. It had remained untouched by previous attacks, protected by advanced shields and a fleet of Vorak fighters. Lyra knew that if the flagship unleashed its power, the planet could still fall. The humans had prepared a plan, and Zytheran fighters had trained for it, but fear still lingered in her chest. Captain Mason, the human officer who had coordinated much of the earlier battle, approached her. "Lyra," he said, "this is it. The Vorak will not back down. Their flagship is powerful, but it has weaknesses. We attack together, humans and Zytherans. Timing and precision are everything." Lyra nodded, her hands tightening on her weapon. "We are ready," she said firmly. "We fight for Zythera, for our people, and for every life they threatened." The human fleet hovered in formation above the plains, each ship ready to deploy warriors and strike with energy weapons capable of piercing even the strongest Vorak shields. On the ground, Zytheran fighters moved into position, carrying supplies, setting up barricades, and coordinating with humans to block Vorak reinforcements. The air was tense, filled with anticipation, every heartbeat with a mixture of fear and determination. At dawn, the assault began. Human ships descended first, dropping squads of warriors into the Vorak lines. They landed with precision, activating energy shields and opening fire on Vorak fighters. The noise of battle filled the plains, the hum of human technology blending with the harsh sounds of Vorak machinery. Zytheran fighters followed, inspired by the humans' courage, moving in tandem to cut off Vorak supply lines and attack enemy reinforcements. Lyra led her team along a rocky ridge, using the terrain to stay hidden while moving closer to the flagship. Captain Mason and his squad coordinated with other human units, giving instructions through radios and hand signals. Every move was calculated. The humans had trained the Zytherans well, and their coordination now rivaled that of the Vorak themselves. As they approached the flagship, automated defenses activated. Energy beams shot toward the ground, but humans had anticipated them. Shield generators deployed, absorbing most of the impact, while fighters moved quickly, disabling turrets with precise shots. The Vorak tried to counterattack, sending waves of fighters into the fray. But the humans' aerial units intercepted them, while Zytheran snipers and fighters picked off key targets on the ground. The flagship's main shield was still active, but Captain Mason had located its weak points through careful observation and analysis. "Lyra, we need to place the devices at the base of the shield generators," he instructed. "That's where it is vulnerable. You and your team can get there from the West Ridge. Cover will be limited, but speed is everything." Lyra nodded, signaling her team. They moved quickly, using rocks, ruins, and debris for cover. Vorak soldiers tried to stop them, but the humans had taught the Zytherans how to anticipate attacks, how to move silently, and strike decisively. Each step forward was a victory. Each obstacle overcome was a testament to their courage. Finally, they reached the base of the flagship. Energy shields glowed faintly, casting light on the ground. Lyra placed the first device, a small, glowing object that hummed with energy. Kale set the second one, while Mira, under the care of human medics, watched from a safe distance. The devices, synchronized with signals from human ships above, preparing to disable the flagship's defenses. "Ready," Lyra whispered into her radio. "Now," came Mason's voice. A pulse of energy surged from the devices, spreading across the shield generators. The massive shield flickered, weakened, and then collapsed entirely. The Vorak flagship was vulnerable. Humans and Zytheran fighters surged forward, attacking with everything they had: energy weapons, grenades, and precise strikes tore through the Vorak lines. The flagship's weapons fired, but without the shields, they were far less effective, and the human pilots skillfully dodged and countered each attack. The battle inside the flagship was intense. Lyra and her team moved through corridors filled with Vorak soldiers, their weapons blazing. Humans led the way, showing the Zytherans how to move efficiently, conserve energy, and target key systems. Machines were disabled, soldiers subdued, and every action brought them closer to victory. Outside, the Vorak fleet began to falter. The loss of their flagship's shield and the relentless human attacks forced them to retreat. Vorak ships attempted to regroup, but the humans' superior coordination and technology cut off escape routes. The skies above Scythera were filled with controlled chaos, each move calculated, each attack decisive. Lyra finally reached the core of the flagship with her team. The massive engine hummed with energy, and Vorak soldiers tried to defend it. Using tactics learned from humans, they disabled defenses systematically. Lyra set the final device on the engine, her hands steady despite exhaustion. "Everyone clear?" she asked. Kale nodded. "Clear." She activated the device. Energy spread through the engine, destabilizing its core. The ship trembled, and alarms blared throughout the vessel. Vorak soldiers tried to escape, but human squads blocked the exits. The flagship shuddered and then exploded in a controlled detonation, a massive fireball lighting the planes. The shockwave knocked fighters off their feet, but the humans had planned for it, and everyone was safe. On the ground, the Vorak forces finally broke. Seeing their flagship destroyed and their lines cut off, they fled across the plains in disarray. Human and Scytheran forces pursued, ensuring no stragglers could regroup. By midday, the plains were clear of Vorak troops, and Scythera was finally free. Lyra stood on a ridge, looking at the battlefield. Smoke still rose from damaged areas, but the enemy had been defeated. Humans moved among Scytheran fighters, helping the wounded, restoring equipment, and giving instructions for recovery. Scytherans were exhausted, but their spirits soared. They had fought alongside Earth's warriors and had survived. Mira ran up to Lyra, her small face bright with excitement. "We did it! We really did it!" she exclaimed. Lyra knelt to her level. "Yes, we did. And we could not have done it without our friends from the stars." She looked at the humans, who were already helping civilians and coordinating repairs. "They came when we needed them most. But they also showed us our own strength." Kale joined them, smiling despite dirt and soot on his face. "We are stronger than we ever knew," he said. "And we will rebuild. Better than before." Human ships began to lift from the surface, ready to return home. But before they departed, Captain Mason approached Lyra and Kale. "You have fought with courage, skill, and determination. Scythera is free because of your people. But we are glad to have fought beside you. Keep your planet safe. Teach what you have learned. And remember, humans will always stand with those who fight for hope." Lyra nodded. "We will. And one day, our children will tell the story of how humans fell from the sky to save Scythera." As the ships disappeared into the sky, Scytherans began to rebuild. Villages were restored, defenses reinforced, and lives were mended. The city, once in ruins, started to thrive again. Children played in the streets, and families gathered in homes, grateful for the courage that had saved them. Lyra walked through the city with Kale, witnessing the changes. People were no longer afraid. Fighters shared stories of bravery, humans and Scytherans alike. Medical teams worked tirelessly. Aided by supplies left behind, engineers restored energy grids and defenses, guided by human knowledge. Every action reminded the people that survival was possible, and victory had been earned. At sunset, Lyra climbed to the top of a hill overlooking the city. She gazed at the stars, thinking of the humans who had come from across the galaxy to fight beside them. Scythera had been saved, but more importantly, its people had learned something valuable. Courage, unity, and determination could overcome even the greatest threat. Mira sat beside her, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers she had picked from the plains. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked softly. Lyra smiled. "Perhaps, but even if they do not, they have left something stronger than themselves behind. They have left us hope, knowledge, and courage. That is enough to protect our world." Kale joined them, looking out over the city and the plains beyond. "Scythera will never forget this day," he said. The galaxy may think we are small and weak, but we have shown that courage and unity make us strong. As night fell, Scythera glowed with lights from repaired homes and flickering fires. The people slept peacefully for the first time in months. Above them, the stars shone brightly, a reminder that help could come from even the furthest corners of the galaxy. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the past battles, the losses, and the victories. Scythera had survived. The Vorak had been defeated, and though scars remained, the planet's spirit was stronger than ever. The story of that day would live on, passed from generation to generation. The day when Earth's warriors fell from the sky and fought alongside Scythera. The day when courage, unity, and hope overcame fear, oppression, and despair. Lyra stood once more, looking toward the horizon. "We are free," she whispered, "and we will remain free. For Scythera, for our people, and for the future we will build together." And in the quiet of the night, under the stars, Scythera began to heal, knowing that even in the darkest times, heroes could arrive from the sky, and hope would never die.